Welcome to the Sports Spectrum Podcast, where faith and sports collide. Here's your host, Jason Romano.
This is episode number 16 of the Sports Spectrum Podcast. My name is Jason Romano. Thank you so much for being a part of our program. Today on the show, we are talking to Baltimore Ravens tight end Benjamin Watson. Now, Benjamin's been a tight end in the NFL for 14 years, and he's also a husband and a dad, and this being Father's Day weekend, he is the perfect guest because he has a brand new book out called The New Dad's Playbook, and Benjamin is going to talk about that book, what it means to be a father. We also ask him how he's feeling. He missed the entire 2016 season because of a torn Achilles tendon injury, so we ask him how his rehab is going on that as well, and we ask him about playing with two of the greatest quarterbacks of all time in Drew Brees and Tom Brady. So that's coming up. But first, I want to tell you about a way that you can win Benjamin Watson's new book. Now, his new book, The New Dad's Playbook, is out now, and we have 2 copies to give away. They've generously donated those to us to give away to you. And so here's how you do it. Very simple. Hopefully you subscribed to the podcast on iTunes, on Stitcher, on Google Play, any of those. So that's great. Subscribe. You'll never miss an episode. And every time we put out a new podcast, it'll just show up right there and you can listen to it. So subscribe. But also, leaving a review. Now, some of you have done this already. It's been wonderful. Thank you for the feedback. But we want you to leave a review. So we're going to choose iTunes for this giveaway. So go to iTunes and leave a review of the podcast. Good, bad, or indifferent. Whatever you want to say about it, leave a review. If it's not great and you don't like what you're hearing, that's okay. We need to hear your thoughts. We want to hear your feedback. So leave a review on iTunes. Let us know your thoughts, what you're thinking of the podcast. But in leaving a review, mention Benjamin Watson. Just put his name in the review, that you heard this interview or that you're a fan of his or whatever, but just mention Benjamin Watson. In doing that, you'll automatically be entered into a drawing to win a copy of his new book, The New Dad's Playbook. Real easy to do. This book, by the way, is perfect if you are a new father. I know when I became a dad, I didn't know what I was doing. It was the first time I became a dad, and I was just a mess. And I wish Benjamin Watson's book was out back in 2004 when I became a father for the first time. But this is a real easy way to win a copy of his book. Just go leave a review on iTunes. Tell us what you think about the show. Let us know. And mention Benjamin Watson's name, and you'll automatically be entered into a drawing to win a copy of his new book, The New Dad's Playbook. All right, let's get to the interview. This is 14-year NFL tight end Benjamin Watson. He won a Super Bowl in 2004 with the Patriots. He played in another in 2007. He was part of that 16-0 team that went undefeated in the regular season, but then lost in the Super Bowl, probably the biggest upset in Super Bowl history, losing to the New York Giants back in February of 2008. Benjamin is a husband to Kirsten. He is a dad of 5 kids. I can't imagine. I have 1 child. He has 5. But he's a dad to 5 kids. But he's also become, outside of football, more than a player. He is a very poignant voice in society on race and faith and culture. He's also written another book called Under Our Skin. So he's an author now. His social media pages are a must follow. He's got a voice in society that he didn't really have 2 or 3 years ago. And we're going to talk about that in a moment. So let's get right to it. This is episode number 16 with Benjamin Watson. Benjamin, how are you?
Jason, I'm doing well, man. How about yourself?
I'm doing great, man. Thank you so much for coming on the podcast. And we got a lot to talk about here, and we only have so much time, so I want to get right to it. First of all, I just want to ask you, starting on the field, how is your health? You're planning on playing in 2017, right?
Yes, I am. My health is a lot better than it was when we talked a few months ago. I've been going through rehab on my Achilles, and I'm in about month 8 now, which is a good place to be. I'm able to do a lot more than I used to. I just need to get my calf muscle a bit stronger, but I am on track to be able to compete this year and to participate in training camp and all the things leading up to it. So I'm excited. It's been a long rehab process and a very tough one, but I'm excited for this next year.
Yeah, let's talk about that for just a sec, that rehab process. Now, you tore your Achilles in preseason last year. You didn't even get to take a snap for the Ravens in the regular season. What was that like, that injury for you?
It was pretty I was very disappointed. Not devastated in the sense that all was lost, but it was a very, very disappointing time, a very trying time. Just to come to a new place, a new system, a new city, new teammates, and be in the process of trying to earn the respect that every athlete wants when they come to a new place, something that has to be earned in the new locker room, moving my family across the country from New Orleans to the Baltimore area, and just trying to embark on a new journey, then to have that sort of setback is very disappointing. I can say that we've received tremendous support from the community, though, and the staff, the training staff in Baltimore has been great as far as helping me rehab. But having that happen before the season started and going into your 13th year at the time, it was a tough thing.
Now, you're obviously not one to sit down and just be like, woe is me. You took advantage of that time to do a lot of things in the time that you had to rehab, not just to rehab, obviously, but to write a book. Now, I was going to talk about this later, but I think this transitions well to this new book you have, The New Dad's Playbook, Gearing Up for the Biggest Game of Your Life. I'm assuming you took the time during that rehab process to help to write this book. Is that fairly accurate?
Yeah, well, the process had already started sometime before that, and then training camp starts happening, so the process slows down. So there was a large chunk of it that needed to be finished. And while I was out, after you have surgery for an Achilles, you can't leave the bed for a couple of weeks. Really, you can't leave the house for a few weeks. And even then, when you leave, it's miserable, and you have to wear a boot, and you can't put any weight on it. So you're really immobile for quite some time. And so during that time, I was able to get back to what I was doing before, which was trying to finish up this handbook, which my wife actually had a large part in it. She's the one who really encouraged me to do it a few years ago. And, she also gave me a lot of input on what should be in there and what shouldn't be in there. So during the time while I was injured was when really the finishing final touches, final editing was done on the New Dad's Playbook.
Love it. We'll talk more about the book in just a moment. We're here with Benjamin Watson on the Sports Spectrum podcast. Now, Benjamin, your career has seen you catch touchdowns from a lot of quarterbacks, but specifically two of the best to ever play, Tom Brady and Drew Brees. Let's just talk about them for a moment. What is it about Brees and Brady that make them not just great, but I'm talking all-time great, legendary great, and what we saw Brady do in the Super Bowl was unlike, I think, anything I've ever seen a quarterback do in that moment. Let's start with Tom Brady. What is it that makes him all-time legendary great?
Well, any great player has a certain competitive edge that is just a little different than everybody else's. And I can remember times in New England where Tom would be competing, whether it was the off-season workouts with Matt Castle running sprints or lifting weights, or it was the 7-on-7 practices, and Mike Vrabel would be on the other side yelling because he went to Ohio State and Tom went to Michigan, and they would go back and forth all the time, all the way until the games when you see Tom going up and down the field. To win this game, that's him, and he's always like that. He's always competing. He's always trying to get better. I remember times coming back from a West Coast trip, and Tom will be in the weight room lifting weights early in the morning, and so those types of things, those types of events, obviously these guys have tremendous talent, physical talent to play the game. But the commitment that they have to perfecting their crafts and encouraging other people around them to be great. Great leaders garner that sort of support from the other guys and kind of raise the standard, raise the tide around them, and it makes the whole team great.
How about Drew Brees?
Drew's the same way. Although Drew's leadership style, I would say, is different. Tom is much more vocal. Drew is a calmer spirit, but a no less confident spirit. And he's also someone that garners a lot of respect in the locker room because I've seen Drew on the field with no one on the field going through his reads. I thought there were ghosts out there or something, but he's out there by himself, calling plays to himself, going through every single read that he has to make in a game. So that when he gets in the game, everything is second nature. And with Drew, I had a good relationship with Tom, but with Drew, we're more contemporaries, I would say, as far as being in the same position as being married for about the same time and having kids about the same time, the same age. He had 4, we had 5. And so I felt like I really connected with him and got to see who he was both on and off the field with his family. And it was encouraging to me to watch that.
Now, I want to go back. It was during your Saints career that a moment happened in November of 2014 for you, which really changed, I think, the trajectory of your life in some ways. You can answer that better than I can, but your first book, Under Our Skin, comes out in November 2015, and it stemmed from the viral Facebook post that you had, as I mentioned, in November of 2014. It was following a Monday night game. Take us back to that moment when you decided to write that Facebook post first, because in many ways, it probably, I would say, changed your life.
Yeah, well, the year was 2014, and if you remember the events that happened in St. Louis, Missouri, Ferguson, Missouri, actually, with Michael Brown and Officer Wilson, there with the killing of Michael Brown, and that happened in August of 2014. And then we waited until November of 2014 to hear the grand jury's decision not to indict the officer. And there was all this speculation. And you remember that when they announced the verdict, and there were protests. Some people were elated, some people were devastated. There was so much going on, and I had just finished a Monday Night Football game against the Baltimore Ravens of all teams in New Orleans, and we lost. And I remember coming home and watching those images all night and feeling very, very upset because this had come on the heels of a number of incidences with police and black male citizens over the course of the last couple of years. And there was a heightened sense of just anger, not really understanding, on both sides, on all sides when it came to this topic. And I was no different. I had an emotional reaction, and I wrote about it and put it on Facebook, and it resonated with a lot of people because ultimately I wanted to acknowledge how I felt, but also wanted to point to my hope of a changed heart through the blood of Christ to renew us and to open our eyes and to take our lenses off so that we can see someone else's pain, see someone else's experience, repent, forgive, and really see each other the way God sees us. And so through the course of the night, it happened on a Monday night. I wrote the post on a Tuesday, and then on Wednesday, it was making its way around the country and around the world via social media. And I think it really just showed that, number one, this issue is something that a lot of people have a lot of very, very strong emotions about. Number two, we don't quite know how to deal with it and how to process it. And number three, we're a lot more similar than we think. And if we were able to unpack all of our emotions and not just the first one, we may find places where we actually agree. And number four, the gospel is really the answer to mankind's ills, because racism, prejudice, bias, and all those things are really manifestations of a sin problem that can only be dealt with by the blood of Christ.
Did you know the impact that post was going to have? Obviously, it takes, when you read it, it's not just your quick one paragraph. You write what in essence turns out to be chapters to your new book, Under Our Skin, that comes out in November 2015. Did you understand when you were typing this? And I remember talking to you about this, and you said you just wrote it in your notes section on your phone, and then all of a sudden it's on Facebook and everything happens. Did you know the impact that this was going to have? Did you understand what you were doing here?
I did not. I was hesitant to even publish it because of the nature of the topic, and also because of the concluding stanza about the gospel and about Jesus Christ. As an athlete, you represent your city, you represent your team, your family name. You want to be respectful to everyone's views. You don't want to offend people. All those things that I've been taught over the years. But certain times, it's such an emotional time for so many people. I just wanted to say what I felt. And I said, these are my feelings. I'm not projecting them on anyone. This is just how I feel right now. I want to be honest about how I feel. And I think the sincerity of it is what resonated with a lot of people. But I had no idea. My phone died as soon as I had someone. I didn't even know how to post to Facebook. I had somebody put it on for me, and then my phone died. And then a couple hours later, my wife was like, "Did you post something to Facebook?" And I said, "Yeah, I did." And she said, "Because my phone is blowing up." And so, the rest is history, obviously. But I had no idea I really think that God used it for a specific time, for a specific purpose, and maybe open some people's eyes to a lot of issues that we're all dealing with.
Yeah, and I think, I've talked to many people about different areas of social media. I just came back from the broadcast boot camp. I know you were at that a few years back, and I give a social media presentation, and I used your example, your Facebook post as an example, just of how platforms can change through just the power of social media. If you don't put that thing on social media, who knows if a book deal comes? Who knows if all of a sudden you're on Fox News and all these different places to talk about something that isn't just your regular football talk?
Yeah, exactly. And, I was, I'm a little late on social media. I was late to get on Twitter. I was late to get on Facebook, Instagram, all those things, because while they can be used for great good and certain positivity, they also are a portal, an opening to open yourself up to specific criticisms or even certain things that you just don't want to deal with in your life visually, that are more readily available when you get on social media. And so I was very hesitant, and I still try to be mindful of how much I'm on it, how I'm using it, and those sorts of things, because we have to be responsible with that gateway. But for those who are on it and are using it in a responsible way, there's nothing that the world has seen up until now that I'm aware of where you can have such an impact so quickly, so vastly across so many different languages and continents than social media. And that can be something of great good, and also something that can be really bad if they're used the wrong way.
We're talking to Benjamin Watson here on the Sports Spectrum podcast. Now, Benjamin, you and I met, it has to be about 6 years ago, when you came to ESPN, and I showed you around and we did the car wash that day. And you're there that day to talk football, and that's kind of what you played football, and when you were doing interviews, you were talking football. So all of a sudden the Facebook post happens, the book happens, your platform changes. It's much different now, even than it was 3 years ago prior to that post. And, I was just Googling you, trying to do some research. I already know you pretty well, but I figured, let me just look and see what I can find. And I went to YouTube, and I couldn't find in the first 9 searches for your name anything to do with football, which I thought was fascinating to me. It was Fox News and CNN and CBN and 700 Club and all these amazing, awesome places, but none of them were football. And so all of a sudden you become an important voice on the discussion of race and faith because of the book and the post. Where are we in society today, Benjamin, when it comes to race and faith?
We are, I think we are at an awakening point where we are realizing that the things that we thought in our human pride that we had moved past, we really haven't. We've had a way of covering them up on the outside. We have the appearance of things being nice and together and the relationships being great, but inside our hearts are still dealing and reeling from many of the same issues that we've had through the history of this country specifically. When it comes to faith, I think the church has been not much different. The church has had the illusion of togetherness and unity, and there are a lot of churches who have that. A lot of churches are striving for that specifically. But there's also a large portion of the church that looks no different and many times worse than their secular counterparts, whereas the church, I believe, because of the mandates throughout Scripture, that should be leading the way when it comes to relationships between different ethnicities.
What do you find when you speak up about, your faith? You're one of the most outspoken people of faith that I've ever met, not just athletes, just people. And I love the stance that you take. I love the boldness that you have. But with that boldness comes backlash. It happened to Christ years ago when he stood up for the truth, and then people would, throw stones at him. And for you, it takes an amount of boldness in the world that we live in to stand up for your faith. So what type of backlash have you received, and how do you handle that backlash just in the day and age that we live in?
Well, sometimes I don't look at what people say on social media.
That's a good, easy way to start.
Exactly. So sometimes you got to know when to say, I can't handle this right now. I'm just not going to look at this. I think that, fortunately, I expect it. I think that we live in a culture, such a faith culture, where we think that everyone's supposed to like what we say, and we judge our success when it comes to speaking about the Lord and being missionary minded on how many people like what we say and congregate in our churches and things like that. Where, as you mentioned before, Christianity is quite the opposite. Christ promises us that we will be persecuted if we actually preach his name. If we're doing it the way that the apostles did it, there should be some sort of backlash. Everyone shouldn't like us. Everyone shouldn't appreciate what we say, even if it is true. And so, for me, I'm aware of that. I always want to be respectful. I'm not in this to try to create a backlash moment, but I am going to stick to truth. But I want to do it in a way that is speaking truth and speaking it in love. I'm one that loves to win arguments, but sometimes it's not a time for an argument to be won. Sometimes it's time to listen to someone else. And then sometimes it's time to have wisdom enough when to insert truth, but never to compromise that truth. And so when I get any backlash, whether it's from a comment or, certain outlets may not really want to talk to me about certain things because they're more, I guess, liberal or non-religious, as they would say. I look at it as, it's going to be for the right people at the right time. God is just giving me an opportunity to speak. He doesn't need me. He just allowed me to be a part of it. And really, my job is just to report the news. It's his job to change people's hearts. It's his job to convict people and to do the spiritual side of the work. That's not my business.
So we're going to switch gears a little bit. I just want to ask you this because I had a few people ask me about this, and even at the conference that we were at, the Increase Conference back in March, it really dawned on me to ask you this question. I just want to talk about the 50-yard line at the end of every game and coming together, a public display of unity as opponents battling on the field and then coming together. Just to take that few minutes to bow your heads and pray. I want you to describe how that transpires, what that experience is like for you. Just take us inside, I guess, for lack of a better word, inside the huddle after the game.
Well, you may know better than me, but my memory fails me on the history of it. I believe it first started maybe in the 70s or 80s. I want to say the 49ers were involved, maybe the Giants. I'm not sure which two teams, so don't quote me on that.
Yeah, it was a game, I believe, in November of 19, I want to say 86, but I could be wrong.
Okay.
I'll go on record with that.
I'm going to go with you. But it's been going on for a very long time. So when I got into the league in 2004, I maybe I had seen it once or twice before, when it's rarely called on television, but I didn't really know what it was. But immediately I followed the guys in front of me, and they went to the middle, to the 50-yard line. And it's always either a chaplain from the home team or a player from the home team that usually leads the prayer. And sometimes you have 5 guys, sometimes you have, up to 25 guys that are kneeling, holding hands, embracing, and just praying and thanking the Lord for the opportunity to play this game, for the platform that we have, praying for our families while we're away from them, praying for safe travel for the visiting team going back, praying for those who have been injured, lifting each other up for the rest of the season and encouraging each other, and simply displaying that although we work for different teams, we play for different teams and have different uniforms on, we are one family when it comes to our belief and being part of God's family. And so we want to just acknowledge that. And it's always something I look forward to. This year I was out of the game because of an Achilles injury, as we talked about before. And one of the things I missed was coming out on the field after the game and taking a knee and praying, because it is something that speaks volumes. And not only that, it's just great to see sometimes the same guys that you don't see throughout the year, but you're going to see them on the 50-yard line whenever you play each other, and you'll be able to recognize each other because you're both believers.
I love it. And every time I see a picture posted on social media of it, I retweet it or share it myself, because I just think it's amazing public display to battle like crazy. for 60 minutes and then all of a sudden turn around and get on a knee and just come together as two teams in the Lord. And I just think it's great. And I've seen a lot of great response, even from non-believers who just think it's wonderful to see two teams come together like that after battling so hard after a game. So that's really great. We are talking to Benjamin Watson. He is the author of the new book, The New Dad's Playbook, Gearing Up for the Biggest Game of Your Life. And I want to talk about the book because we have Father's Day coming up here. You're a dad of 5. I'm only a dad of 1. So when I say 5, that sounds like a nightmare to me, just having 5 kids. Now, so you've had some experience in this lane as a dad now, but you mentioned earlier about the sort of time that you had, but why write this book right now, The New Dad's Playbook?
Like I mentioned before, my wife mentioned to me after maybe our second kid or so, she's like, Benjamin, you need to write a handbook for dads so that as they go through pregnancy, they know what to do, what not to do, what to say, what not to say to the mother of their children. Give them tips and give them encouragement, but give them real practical information about the first OB appointment, about setting up a nursery, what are some essentials when it comes to a crib and a diaper genie, and how to even put on a diaper, how to swaddle, what to do when their wife has morning sickness and they have no idea how to handle it like I didn't, and just give guys information that they won't know until they go through it. But hopefully if they know it beforehand, they can navigate this pregnancy thing much more smoothly and without as much conflict as I probably had with my wife on the first child and the second child. And so the timing of it coming out now, honestly, is just a matter of, God's perfect timing. Like I mentioned before, I was able to finish a lot of it while I was injured. I already started on it before. We just had our 5th kid last year, actually in 2015, there in New Orleans. And we're at a place where I've experienced a lot when it comes to pregnancy, to raising kids when they just come home from the hospital. And I'm in the locker room every year for the last 13 years with a lot of guys who have these types of conversations. Just a week ago, 2 weeks ago, I had a conversation with a guy whose girlfriend is 2 months pregnant. Another guy's wife just had their first child. So these things are happening, and we're having these conversations. And now I'm able to say, look, to prepare yourself, check out this book. And there's checklists in here. There's encouragement in there because a lot of guys, no matter where they're from, no matter what their background is, no matter what their economic status has been growing up, if you go across the board and ask any guy in any situation, most of them will say they want to be good dads to their kids, whether they know how or whether they don't.
Yeah, I got to be honest with you. I'm kind of mad that you came with this book now because my daughter is 13 years old now, and we just have one.
Oh, I ain't got nothing for you yet. I need your book.
Listen, we can work on that teenage book soon, but right now,
yeah.
I remember 2004 when she was born and just being lost. And I was so excited to become a dad. And, we tried for a few years and were unsuccessful and then finally becoming a dad. And I remember everything you just described, even how to swaddle a baby and getting things like the bottle ready and, what is a boppy, I think it was called. Like, what are these things?
Yeah, the boppy pillow.
Boppy pillow, right. I had no idea what these things are. And it was a crash course. I mean, it's unlike any crash course you will ever find in your life is becoming a dad, becoming a parent. So this book, and I've checked it out and reading it, and it's just awesome. And I cannot recommend it more to people who are thinking about becoming parents, especially to dads, but people who especially dads who are getting ready to have that moment happen for them. This book is a must read. I cannot recommend it more. Let me just ask you simply, like I said, Father's Day coming up. What does it mean to you to be a dad?
Well, there's a lot of emotions when it comes to that. So the charge, I believe, for fathers to be leaders in their households, to be the protector, obviously physically, to be providers, to be the priest, as we are the ones who are the spiritual leaders also of our household. So there is a lot of pressure on fathers. There's a lot of responsibility on fathers, but there's also a great reward because of fathering done well. When we look at our children and look at the legacy that we can leave with them and look at the impact that they're going to be able to have and go to places that we may never see and may never have the opportunity to go to. Our children are going to be kind of our messengers to places of that we may never see. And so to be a dad is obviously fun. There's tough times as well. There's times when I wish that I'm like, man, I got 5 kids. They're driving me crazy right now. There are plenty of those times, and they actually happen every day.
Mm-hmm.
But there's also the times where I'm incredibly proud of something that they've done, and I see their growth, and I see myself in them, in that they make the same mistakes kind of like I do. And then it is my opportunity to be their first real introduction to their Heavenly Father and show them what forgiveness is and discipline is and unconditional love is. So they're able to do the same things when they have children later on in life.
Now, for those struggling right now, listening right now as dads, they're not connecting with their kids. Maybe they feel unqualified. Even people who haven't had their children yet and they're just scared to death. And maybe they think they're not able to do a very good job as a father. What kind of encouragement would you have for these men?
Well, there's no perfect dads, and that's because there's no perfect people. I'm someone who wants perfection. I'm a perfectionist to a fault. I can feel guilty a lot of times if I didn't do something and didn't respond to a situation the right way, and it can haunt me. But there's forgiveness in that, and there's grace in that. The great thing is that although we can't father perfectly, we can't be the perfect husbands, God's grace can cover for those missteps. He's the one ultimately that we have to rely on for the power to do these sorts of things, because we can't do it in our own power. So to those dads who have maybe made some huge mistakes, I don't know what they may be, but it may be something that you feel like you can never come back from. There's always repentance. There's always turning back. It's never too late to make up. Although you can't go back, you can go forward, and your children need you. Satan will love nothing more than to keep you from connecting with your children, connecting with your wife, having the relationship that you guys need to set the tone in the house, because he will love to destroy a family. By destroying a family, you can destroy several generations, and many of these men have been a result of mistakes that they didn't even make. And so my biggest encouragement, I think, to men throughout the book is that even if you don't know what to do and it wasn't demonstrated to you, you have what it takes. A man needs to know he has what it takes. And it doesn't matter if you had a father or you didn't, or you had a father that was not around or was abusive or whatever it may be. You have an opportunity to change the course of generations, and you have what it takes. And the reason for writing the You Guys Playbook is to really prepare men so that they can create the nest that will be protective and will be as nurturing as possible for when their kids enter it.
Couple more minutes here with Benjamin Watson. You mentioned kids without a dad. I think it's a very real thing in society. I could classify it even as an epidemic. And I'm so saddened when I'm working with youth, not only with my daughter, but youth basketball programs with young boys, and their dads aren't around. This is a problem here. What do you think can be done to help put a dent into this and to kind of make this go away?
Yeah, that's a great question. I mean, about 32% of our kids are growing up without a father or father figure in the home. And if you look at statistics, when you talk about fatherlessness in our country or really anywhere, you look at poverty, you look at education, you look at teen pregnancy, you look at incarceration. All those things can be linked to a dad simply not being in the home. And we are also creatures of habit. We do what we've seen. So it's kind of the self-perpetuating curse that you don't have a dad and then you end up doing the same thing as your father did because you didn't see it. And so I really believe there's a spiritual component here, because God promises to be a father to those who are fatherless. And he promises to be the ultimate father to show us what it means to be a father when we haven't had one. And when we engage with him through his word, and when we understand who he is, we understand what it is to be a father, what it is to have unconditional love, what it is to instruct our children, what it is to discipline our children, what it is to be faithful to our wives, what it is to be that sort of leader, even if we haven't ever seen it. And so whenever I talk to young men who don't have fathers, the number one thing I want to do is point them to a Heavenly Father. I don't want to point them to an individual. I don't want to point them to a mentor, really. I want them to see their Heavenly Father for who he is, so that they can understand what fatherhood really is. And then again, I want to challenge them to be different. They know what it's like not to have a dad. They know the pain that they've gone through. They know how lost that they are. They're honest with themselves. Again, I've had these conversations. And so many of them don't want to repeat that on their kids. I've heard people say over and over again, you know what, I didn't have a dad. I don't want to do that to my kids. And so, it's about encouraging guys when it comes to that. But this is like you mentioned, this is an epidemic, and it's something that should not be overlooked. And it's something where, as men, we need to challenge other men when it comes to this. We need to be willing to stand in the gap for those who may not have fathers, whether it's through mentorship, whether it's through, as you mentioned, the basketball programs. There are some dads who simply will not be fathers and are not interested in doing it. And so hopefully there are others that can step in and fill the gap. And there's a bunch of other issues when it comes to fatherhood, but, this is a real issue, and it's something that is important and needs to be addressed, but we all need to play a role in it, I believe.
Absolutely. We're here with Benjamin Watson on the Sports Spectrum podcast. The book is called The New Dad's Playbook, Gearing Up for the Biggest Game of Your Life. Benjamin, I asked this question to all of our guests here on the podcast. It's one of our last questions, but simply, what is God teaching you right now?
Right now, God is it's kind of something that He's been impressing upon really our family collectively. I'm a planner. My wife is a planner. The NFL is an uncertain business. Life is uncertain in general. As we look over our past 13 years in the league, He's always been faithful. Whether it's been a move, whether it's been a new kid, whether it's been an injury, an illness, some sort of pain or distress, a death, whatever it may be, He's always provided what we needed at the right time. And so the encouragement now, coming off an injury, trying to get back to form, writing the New Dad's Playbook and other books, looking forward to next year playing and beyond that, living in a new place, dealing with kids that are growing up. 5 of them, the oldest is 8, the youngest is only 1, and they're changing every day. As far as how they relate to each other, sometimes we feel inadequate with how we can raise these children the right way. And it's, you know what, Benjamin, I'm faithful. I'm here. I'll always be here. You do your job, and I'll do the rest. You can trust me because I have a proven record of being trusted. And really through this season of just the turmoil of the injury when you first move somewhere, and just, my wife having to really take care of 6 of us because I couldn't do anything, and what the strain that puts on a relationship, stuff like that. That's really been the overarching theme, I think, is that He's faithful. His faithfulness is great.
That's awesome. He is a dad. He's a husband. He's a football player. He also happens to be a speaker, and he's a writer with this new book, The New Dad's Playbook. Benjamin Watson, best of luck, man, this year with the Ravens, and thank you so much for being here on the podcast. I really do appreciate it.
Jason, hey, I appreciate what you're doing. Thank you for your commitment to sharing stories like this, and always praying for you, brother. I appreciate
Thanks, man. Same here. And that was Benjamin Watson. We thank him very much for being a part of the Sports Spectrum podcast, Baltimore Ravens tight end. And listen, I wish him nothing but the best to come back healthy and have a great season in Baltimore for the Ravens. And we look forward to seeing him on the football field coming September 2017. Also, a reminder, you want to win a copy of his book, real easy to do. Just go to iTunes, leave a review, mention his name, Benjamin Watson. So go to iTunes and leave a review, good, bad, or indifferent. If you didn't like the interview, that's okay. We still want to bless you with a book. So leave a review on iTunes, mention Benjamin Watson's name, and in mentioning his name, you're automatically entered into a drawing to win a copy of his new book, The New Dad's Playbook. It's a really great book, really great resource for anyone who's a dad, but especially for new fathers. And this being Father's Day weekend when this podcast is being released, it could not come at a more perfect time. So let us bless you. Simply leave a review on iTunes and tell us what you think of the program. And as we do every week, we welcome in Raymond St. Martin, the Director of Digital and Media for Sports Spectrum and The Increase. And Raymond, I thought a lot of what Benjamin Watson said was really great in so many different topics and so many different areas, but it is Father's Day weekend as we release this podcast, and I thought his take on parenthood, his new book, The New Dad's Playbook, and just fatherhood in general, it was really important to delve deep into this topic because you and I are both dads. We both have children, and we're not the perfect father. And I just think hearing Benjamin speak on fatherhood was it was perfect timing in a lot of ways.
Yeah, it's amazing to think that there are men like Benjamin out there that have this heart to share with those of us who have a hard time being fathers. For me, my mom was 15, my dad was 17. When I was born, they were never married. In fact, on the day I was born, my father was driving another girl down to San Diego from the Bay Area. He was not interested in being a father whatsoever in my life. And, throughout time, we've developed a relationship. We speak every now and then, and he was there at my wedding, and I was there when he married my stepmother, and we've had some of those moments together. But when it comes to being a father, I had no clue when I had my son, who's now 23. And you always, like you said, you always want to be a good father. I don't care what your background is. If you had the almost perfect dad, or if you had no dad, when you have a child, you want to be a good father to that child. And we just, those of us that go through that, we spend our life, I believe, looking for models. Maybe it's your baseball coach, maybe it's your football coach, and then maybe they let you down, or maybe it's your pastor, or it's someone else. But not having that father in your home is just, man, it leaves such a void, for us to try to figure out, for those of us to figure out that want to be good dads.
Yeah. I mean, I echo what you said. My situation was a little different, but my parents were divorced when I was 6. And, my dad struggled, with alcohol and depression for 40 years and was not at my wedding, was not at my graduations from high school or college, was not at at the hospital when my daughter was born. So I know what you're talking about. And I know that's why I thought it was so important to ask Benjamin about it, because I hate to say this, but I think your situation and my situation are, I don't want to say becoming the norm, but are becoming more prevalent and are still very prevalent in this world. This absentee father, this perfect, or this person who we're looking for as an example, who we all as children deserve to have. We deserve good parenting. We deserve good fathers in our life, people who love us and care for us and are there for us to show us, to mold us, to teach us. And you didn't have that, and neither did I. And, I've had to come to a place of forgiveness with my father, and that's a whole nother story for another time. But I just think that what Benjamin said about, just wanting to be a good dad, which I think we all do, when we have kids, and then getting caught up in whatever, kind of comes into our world that prevents us from doing that. I just think people like Benjamin, and the great thing about God and the second chance that he gives us is, you, Raymond, I watched you with your children. You're a good dad. And I can tell that you are intentionally a good father because you maybe didn't have one. And for me, I try so hard with my daughter, who's now 13, to be an excellent role model and a good dad to her, because I never had that dad. I never had somebody there to just love me and to be available to me without some sort of condition or without some sort of drug or alcohol or addiction or thing going on. So I don't know. And it's the beautiful thing that this brings me to, I think, that we can both talk about is how we have a God in heaven who is the perfect father, and he is not, you'll get into this in a minute, but he's not this just lovey-dovey kind of softy, big teddy bear father. But he does love us unconditionally, and he looks at us as his children and wants the best for us, and he's always available to us, and he never leaves us, and he works all things for the good of those who are called according to his purpose. So it's such a wonderful model that we can all try to exemplify as parents, but knowing that the God in heaven that we love, that we serve, is perfect. He's perfect.
He's perfect, and what I love about that is he's not perfect in the sense of he's exactly the dad that we want him to be. He's perfect in being a father.
Yes.
He demands respect, he demands honor, he demands these things of his children. And if you honor and respect him and you walk with him and you have a relationship with him, he's going to bless you in your life. Maybe it's not today, maybe it's tomorrow, maybe it's next week, maybe it's a month from now. But that relationship that he seeks, I believe, is the relationship that we all also seek with our children. It's the most precious moments to us are when for me, I can speak that when my daughters just walk up to me for no apparent reason and just hug me or just sit on my lap because I'm dad.
Yeah.
And that's what our Heavenly Father, I feel like he just wants that. He wants us to come to him. He wants us to submit to him. He wants us to sit in his lap. He wants us to put our cares in his hands and say, Father, help me with this. Father, take care of this for me. And when we're doing that with our children and we're showing them how we do it to our Father, I think that's how, at least for me, that's how I am a much better parent today than I was 23 years ago. Because I feel like I'm trying to model that love that our Father has for us back to him and in front of my children.
And we're going to mess up. That's why we're not perfect, you and I. We're going to hopefully be better parents than our dads were. But what does better look like in the eyes of God? Like we still all fall short. So, and that took me a long time to recognize that, what? God loves my dad and your dad just as much as he loves you and me. And that was hard for me to grasp. Like, no, that's not right. This guy has done so many bad things in his life to me and to my family and to himself. How can God love him equally as me? And when you look at it, we're all wretched in his eyes in the sense that we all need him and we all have to cling to him and go to him. But what a perfect model. What a model for us to go and say, because I think a lot of people don't look at God as a relationship aspect. They look at God as just this kind of being that looks down on us and throws lightning bolts when we do bad things. And that's not what we do as parents. It's not how I am as a dad. I'm sure it's not how you are either. I mean, there's going to be times when we have to discipline our kids. But there's also times when we have this little child, which now not little anymore for me, but coming and sitting on my lap and just saying, Dad, I just want to sit next to you and be with you and be in your presence. And that's the model of how we can look at our relationship with God. He wants the same thing. He just wants sometimes us to sit and just bask in his presence and just hang with him.
And it's so important too. I think one thing that happens for us that, when we make mistakes as a parent, we feel a lot of shame. We carry the shame with us as parents into our lives. And I think, in order to get over that, one thing that's been hitting me lately is just accepting that I deserve goodness. Accepting that we deserve forgiveness. That when we come to him, we deserve that, and as I think it's okay when we make mistakes. It's okay for those, 33% of the people that are listening to this podcast grew up without having a father in the home.
Yeah.
It's okay to take your shame to our Savior. That's what he's there for. He understands us. He knows us. He knows that we live with this shame. And he knows that we live with the shame of being fatherless. He knows that we live with the shame of not being a great parent. And we take it to him. And I hope that if anyone out there struggles with this like I do, that these words might touch your heart the way that these words have touched my own.
That's a wonderful piece of encouragement. Happy Father's Day to you, my friend. Appreciate you.
You too, brother.
Yes, sir.
It's going to be a great weekend. We have so many things launching this weekend. This Benjamin Watson interview is going to be amazing. I think it'll touch a lot of people. Also, the Adam LaRoche video.
Yeah, tell us more about that. Tell us about that.
Well, the Adam LaRoche video, Adam's story, if people aren't familiar with that, Adam LaRoche had a $13 million contract to play last season with the White Sox. And he'd had a very close relationship with his father growing up. Adam grew up at the baseball field. To him, life was, as a kid, being at the baseball field with Dad. And so when his son became of age, he started bringing his son to the field. And everyone in baseball knew that. They knew that his son would come to the field and they would hang out, and he became like part of the team. And something happened. God started orchestrating a shift in his life. During the off season before last year, he went to Thailand and he had this experience that God started preparing his heart, saying, should you still be in the game? Is there other work that you should be doing? Is there something else I should be doing out there in the world and for the kingdom? And when he came into to spring training last year, Kenny Williams told him not to bring his son to the ballpark anymore. And immediately he knew that it was time to be a father over a baseball player. He couldn't do both at the same time anymore. And being a father was much more important to him. So he walked away from the game, and he walked away from $13 million. And there was a lot of people questioning that, like, how can you walk away from $13 million? But I think when you watch the video, you'll understand, why. You'll understand, not only what his love for his son was, but how he sees the love of our Father as well, and how that affected his decision.
Yeah, that's going to be available, or is available, as we release this podcast and you're listening. You can also go to our Facebook page, Sports Spectrum, and you can see this video. And it'll also be all over, sportspectrum.com, theincrease.com, the Increase's social media pages as well. You'll be able to find this pretty easily if you just go and search for it. But I cannot recommend it more, this Adam LaRoche video. And just to kind of give this plug into, this is an area that Raymond and I and our team here at Sports Spectrum are delving into more. You're going to see a lot more original content and videos, especially to our social media pages and to our website. So please keep looking. There was a video that we released a little while ago with the story of Chris Carpenter, the St. Louis Cardinals former pitcher. And Adam Wainwright is in this video, as is Matt Holliday, who's now a New York Yankee. And it's just the story of how Chris was redeemed in the most amazing and crazy way in the middle of nowhere. And that video has really taken off on Facebook. And I just want people to know that this material and this content is out there, because this podcast is wonderful, and I'm privileged and honored to be a part of it, as is Raymond. But we have a lot bigger plans going on here and what God's doing with Sports Spectrum, don't we?
Yes, we do. This whole Sports Spectrum network is just blowing up in front of our eyes, and we're just encouraging and welcoming people to just help support it. As the bigger it grows, we want to grow with it.
Yeah.
And I think we've put together a compelling membership plan that, if you want to help support the podcast and the increased videos and Football Sunday, $36 a year will help us do that.
Yeah, it's $3 a month when you factor it in, but it's a 1-year membership, $36. You can partner with us and become a member of the Sports Spectrum family. It's more than just a magazine, because we also have 4 magazines to give them too, right?
Yes, it comes with a quarterly subscription. So the subscription rate is $36 a year. So your subscription is going to help us continue to produce all of these videos. And all of the content you see on sportspectrum.com, and all of the videos you see on The Increase, and all of the stories. I mean, if you've never been to theincrease.com, theincrease.com is putting Jesus back in the discussion of the lives of professional athletes.
Yeah.
If you look at mainstream media right now, the first word they cut out is Jesus. The second word they cut out is Christ.
Yep.
Christian sometimes makes it in if it's your first name. But we are called to use our platform to reach the world. And there is, I won't say that the mainstream media is the enemy, but they are literally marketing to the very general public. And The Increase says we're going to put Jesus back in the conversation, because the pro athletes believe that their platform needs to be used to grow the kingdom of God. And so you'll read first person stories from Matt Holliday and Adam Wainwright. You'll do Brees videos. You'll see
Benjamin Watson
is a monthly contributor.
Yeah.
Brandon Marshall and Matt Forte. These are people that have taken the time to share their lives and to help spread the gospel in a very direct manner. These are their stories. This is not something that we're writing about them.
Right.
This is in their own words, prepared by them. So I encourage you, go to theincrease.com. It's free. Sports Spectrum is free. Our Facebook page is free. Everything that we're doing is free except for the magazine. So we said, hey, if you subscribe and become a member, what does that really look like?
Yeah.
And ultimately what that membership does is it allows us to produce all this free content that's helping us take the gospel to the ends of the earth. Like you said, that Chris Carpenter video is over 1 million views on Facebook. That's 1 million people that have been exposed to the gospel. Yeah. That's amazing.
It's awesome. And that's the whole point of what we're doing this for. So become a member. SportsSpectrum.com is the place to go, and you can be part of that subscription service for the magazine. But also it's bigger than that, like Raymond just said. It's about becoming a member of the Sports Spectrum family and partnering with us to continue to bring the gospel to the ends of the earth through the power of sports. Raymond, thanks a lot, man. Happy Father's Day.
Happy Father's Day, Jason.
Again, thank you so much for being a part of the Sports Spectrum podcast, for listening, for subscribing, for downloading, for leaving a review, all of that. We really appreciate everything that you're doing to be a part of the Sports Spectrum family. Next time on the show, that will be episode number 17. James Brown from CBS Sports in episode number 17. His story is fantastic. I can't wait to bring you that. We had a chance to sit down in person about a month ago and just talk about his life. And there's so much there, so much good stuff. I can't wait to bring it to you. But thanks so much again for joining us. To the dads listening, listen, you are loved, valued. You are awesome. Thank you for being the awesome father that you are. Happy Father's Day to you. And we will see you next time on the Sports Spectrum podcast.